Reason why I'm here. G'day, I'm Hamish Watson, I'm your MC. Most of you I've probably offended at one time or another, so we're going to have a great time. I got the memo about the beard. This is not real, I plastered it on this morning. Anyway, we are going to listen from James Everett, who is the creative director at Niantic, Aotearoa, NZ. Now, you've all read the bio, so I'm not going to really say much about James's bio. What I am going to tell you is that James has an unholy fascination with penguins. So much so that when James decided he had to go skydiving, he went skydiving with a penguin. And it went really well because James is still here. Can't talk about the penguin, court order's still working that out. Anyway, James, over to you. And please use the app to put your questions in. I will be moderating it, and the popular ones I will be asking at the end. All right. Thanks, James.
Cheers. Okay. Are we good? Cool. Kia ora katoa. Hi, I'm James. Penguin thing, ask me later, but it's true. So welcome to the inevitable, possibly, XR Futures and you. I thought I'd try to get a bit of future, and this is what Midjourney gave me for a futuristic Christchurch. So that's an AI-generated image. Kind of neat. A couple variations, and that's what I got. Come on, buttons. Hey, buttons. So really briefly, I started making video games circa 2000, 2001. If you remember when we used to put things on discs and ship them out to people, we couldn't patch anything, no live updates. You burned it to disk, it's done. Came to New Zealand circa 2008 the first time, worked with a company called She, who are now Pickpock. We had a lot of fun making games like Shatter, and even, if anybody remembers the App Store, we didn't have the App Store. 2008, 2009, that actually started happening, and we made some really fun games initially, which became the Pickpock brand, and now Pickpock is the longest running game studio, I think in Australasia, but they just crossed 26 years. Went back to Canada for a while and worked on kind of funky Xbox things, but the common feature you'll see, this is not happening, doesn't love me. Oh, yeah, there we go, maybe. You're gonna push buttons for me? That's amazing, we're gonna be so confused. The common factor in this is square screens, right? This is a screen in a fixed position. The content is entirely virtual. We have full control over absolutely everything, which is kind of neat. Lets us tell stories and create great experiences. Next slide. 2015, I came back to New Zealand after spending some time in Toronto with Ubisoft. I worked with actually this gentleman here, Greg Broadmoor, who is our creative director at Weta Workshop, and it was a collaboration between Magic Leap, the company making these AR glasses, and Weta Workshop in order to make a game that really pushed the hardware as far as it could go. Because when you're making a new hardware or software platform, unless you test every bit of it with something that just breaks everything, well, you end up shipping something where people can't use it super well. So our job was to take all of the pain before everybody else. It was fun. Next slide, and then hit another button.
A ray gun. Cool, right? Also quite dangerous. Probably should sign a waiver.
So we were making a game that was human-scale combat with robots climbing out of your walls. This had to work and diverse in every environment imaginable. We shipped this in 2018. Next slide. This is going to be super painful. I'm so sorry. Short version, we got laid off at the start of 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic when we were in level 4 lockdown, which tell you when you can't even go to the pub, talk crap about what just happened. It's not a lot of fun. We started at NZXR, 10 of us, as a AR/VR consultancy. We're really, really busy for about 2 years, but our second client was, next slide, I really wish we could make this work, and if you push the button a couple of times, we're just gonna fill in the screen, that'll be cool. We were acquired by Niantic in April, and you'll probably know Niantic mostly for Pokemon Go, but they have a bunch of interesting games. We're gonna cross our fingers we make some things work, and including some upcoming exciting ones like NBA All World and Marvel World of Heroes, and one I'm really excited about, Peridot, which is an AR-first virtual character who actually runs around with you on your phone. It's really magical. The other half of the business, can we have the next slide? Thank you. I've got so many transitions in this thing, and this is gonna go so badly. Hey, now we're on XR. It's cool. Anyways, Niantic has been making, taking a bunch of what we have learned building games like Pokemon Go and all of our tools and technologies for that and making them into a platform we call Niantic Lightship. We're also working heavily in the web AR space with Eighth Wall, and I'm just going to keep rolling and we'll see how we go here. So XR, what the heck are we talking about? Next one. It's basically just an umbrella term for augmented and virtual reality. Next slide. So in augmented reality, if you push that one more time, in AR, digital content is either overlaid or included in the real world. You can see here how objects are bouncing off of the environment. We've got occlusion, we've got shadows happening. That kind of stuff is super neat, and that happens often on mobile and also in the glasses I mentioned. Next slide. If there's Trimble folks in the room, they're probably going to be like, oh, geez, this is from forever ago. But these are the pictures I have, I'm sorry. But obviously, this is an XR10, which is a HoloLens 2 inside of a helmet for safety. And AR is used, obviously, I come from a games background, that's my excitement, but there is obviously a lot of other uses for it. Next slide, including like Brain Lab, which was used, in this case, this is surgeons training for a very, very complicated surgery to separate conjoined twins. I will point out, no one has yet worn one of these in surgery in a thing yet. We are not there yet, but really cool for training. So if we go next slide, so that's AR. In virtual reality, push it one more time, the digital content is in a fully virtual environment. This is Wander. This is a team actually primarily up in Auckland, Mighty Eyes. Really cool exploratory game. So we've taken over the whole world, right? It's back to kind of those screens I started with, but we're in this space, and you can go into places that you'd never imagine. Amazing for training, amazing for things in dangerous environments where you'd like to drop somebody and have them, have an experience that would otherwise be like, it's really hard to put people in like a burning house unless they're a trained firefighter, so things like that. If we go next, and then sitting between these two, and then one more time, please, mixed reality or pass-through. So this is an application called Aotearoa, and you can see here how there is virtual content, and now the user is sort of drawing over the couch to include the physical environment with the virtual, and you can see the toggling happening there. So interesting things with pass-through, it's sort of like a stopgap between the AR and VR worlds. So that's sort of the continuum of this XR stuff. And next, where we start to get out into the real world with Niantic and a few other folks doing similar things is what we call a visual positioning system. So if you hit that one. In this case, we are literally anchoring this content to a known position in the world where you just move your phone around, we grab that position and go, we start with GPS and then we get down to about 2 centimeter accuracy to know where this environment is. And then we can have fun stuff like have characters wander around for real and actually be occluded by the environment because we have a bunch of cool meshing stuff. Next. One more. To build that, we've got this thing called a geospatial browser. It lets you jump around, look for these points that are available out in public. You can grab this mesh, set up anchors inside of it, say, I'm going to put my content here, and it will persist in that location, which is a really big change that's just happening in the last couple of years. And you see from this editing environment, so we'll just go next, please, that this is coming, that stuff was actually all done in a browser. My team primarily works with a game engine called Unity and the Lightship sort of lower level SDK stuff, but on the website, it's just by leaps and bounds over the last couple of years getting more and more functional. So I'll just show you a few things here. These are Eighth Wall, one more. Just to get an example of like some of the things that you can do in this space, right? So the cool thing with WebAR is that it's still just in a browser. So you get a URL and it's like, okay, now we've got face tracking, we've got stuff we can put in the environment. We can have all kinds of exciting experiences that just no app download required. It's pretty neat. Next, and the picture I had at the beginning there, that was an AI-generated image. If you, one more. This is actually a developer from, I believe they're from Brazil. Shortly after Stable Diffusion APIs came out, they were like, cool, what if we like plug that into Eighth Wall and then we can, do dynamic wallpaper of any kind that you want, that you can come up with. It's like, okay. Exploding is the right word. If you've sort of seen anything happening in the social media space and whatnot over the last little while, like There is just huge leaps and bounds happening around things like Midjourney and DALL-E right now. I will suggest, however, if you are looking to do that commercially, get a bunch of legal advice first. It is a bit complicated as to where ownership lies around a lot of these things. Next. So what's the hardware that makes all this happen? Mobile AR, obviously. We've got Apple's iPhone and the various Google Android flavors. Apple has their AR Kit, and Google has AR Core, which is basically the low-level AR foundations that work on those devices. Next, AR glasses, which is my jam. That's where I hope to be spending most of my time for the coming years, has been advancing rapidly. We're still not anywhere near like a really common everyday consumer device. It's going to be a few years away, but it's very, very functional these days. And if you're working in the enterprise space, doing anything with training, or you're doing like location-based experiences, holy smokes, there's stuff getting good. The Magic Leap 2 is a giant jump from the 1. The HoloLens 2 is still out there and has got a lot of success in the enterprise space because of Microsoft's understanding of that environment. Snap, the folks that make Snapchat, they're the only people that I know of right now really focused on outdoor play. And so the spectacles, while they're not commercially available, like they sent us a pair to play with and we're wandering around outside going, why, this works. And that's a fully self-contained device. And then last week, Qualcomm announced the new version of their Snapdragon Spaces platform, which is basically an SDK and wrapper along with a reference design for a headset. So Qualcomm makes the chips that you find in a lot of your phones and other devices. Their new announcement last week was the AR2 platform, which is a chip that's specifically designed for these AR glasses and with wireless communication to a phone. So the phone acts as the primary compute driver of that, whatever it is that you're doing. And it's getting to the point where, as larger manufacturers, Lenovo's already made one set of glasses with their first gen of the tech. It's going to start to, I think, explode quite quickly. Next, and then of course we've got virtual reality. We've got the Meta Quest 2, which is the consumer headset that I imagine a lot of people have experienced. The Quest Pro, it just came out. Did we nail it? Hey, this is exciting. Okay, so I'm going to start talking even faster. I'm sorry. This is just a thing because I'm running out of time here. And so headsets are neat. They're fun. There's lots of them out there. Hardware, it's great. It's so great that we're trying to build some with Qualcomm. Again, this is a reference design, so we won't be mass manufacturing these as Niantic. We're okay. We're okay for time. Well, I'm looking at 8 minutes, and you don't know how many slides I have. Cool. So this stuff's really neat because Niantic's mission is to get people outdoors and playing together, to socialize. And if anybody's played Pokemon Go or Pikmin or any of our other games, you know that getting out to play these games is really the only way to experience them. What we really like to do is to be able to let you have these deeper and more immersive experiences out in the world. So last week we showed off a little bit of, come on, do it. There we go. The current prototype development. Apologies for the sharp cut. We don't quite have time for all of it. But so aside from video games, I mentioned, of course, the example of Trimble. IKEA for years has been using this in retail situations, allowing people to, put furniture in their room and see if it'll fit. Disaster preparedness is something that we have been seeing a lot in the training space. So it's a somewhat older example, but it's really interesting. Just if you want people to understand the types of change that can happen to the environment around them, being able to show them even a rough version of it is much, much more compelling than going, guess what? Water's coming up. Nobody actually says it like that, but you know what I mean. This is a local success story. Overcome, I'm not sure if any of those folks are here, looking at phobia and pain management through VR, which has been a very deeply studied space over the last few years. Civic visualization. This is the digital twin of Wellington, actually built in Unreal. So the traffic data was real. Obviously, that bit's not real. Hopefully, we'll get something like that in the next few years. Fingers crossed. But there's just so many ways that this stuff can be used. It's basically, if you can think of anything in your field. So I'm not sure, who here has either developed or played with a VR thing? Cool. Augmented reality? Fair few. Excellent. So, and I'm sure you're from everything from agri-tech to healthcare and everything in between. So if you just think for a moment, like what XR tool or experience would make a difference in your field? Anybody's got anything they're excited about sharing if it popped to mind? Nah, putting everybody on the spot like that is never a good idea, but I did it anyways, because you never know. Sometimes you get some cool stuff. But bottom line, it doesn't take long to start thinking through, like, what are the ways that you could use these technologies to have an impact on your business, your customers, and your staff. So that's a whole lot of fun stuff and things, but if you haven't actually developed in this space, what are some ways to get started? The good news is it's easier than ever. There are all kinds of tools available. There's all kinds of training available. There's lots of resources online. The hardware is getting cheaper and more capable all of the time. Everyone in the room probably has a phone that is very AR capable. The devices and the headsets are getting cheaper and more functional over time. But it's still not easy. If you haven't worked in the space before, then your first discovery will probably be that building interactive 3D content is wildly different from traditional application development. There are so many things to consider. The UX around these things, the pipelines, the tooling, it's all very strange. And then when you add bridging the physical and the digital, that further increases the complexity. And I think that's probably the number one thing I'd say about this is that it's going to be harder and weirder than you can possibly imagine, so just get used to it. And for me, like coming in from a game development background, the tools and techniques that really make XR function come mostly from our field. Because we're the folks who ended up doing interactive real-time 3D for a long time because that's how we made cool stuff for people. And so that's sort of underpinning the XR development space. But of course, as lots of folks are coming in, that's expanding rapidly. So I'll try and give you a few tips, things to consider that are not technical things mostly, that might help you out as you dive into this stuff. First, build cross-discipline teams. This is something I run into a lot. I still run into it at some game companies, in fact. If your engineers and your artists are in totally separate buildings or different pods or different teams or whatever your definition is, get rid of that wall. You need people sitting together, working together. Well, if you're not physically co-located, my entire team is remote. We're based all over the country. Just working together every single day is absolutely critical. And also, get everybody else involved, because it's not just art and engineering. It's who's handling your creative direction, your UX, production, sound design is absolutely crucial to this space. So get these teams, mash them all together, let people talk to each other as much as possible, because that's how the good stuff happens. Figure out the appropriate tools for your use case and your team, right? So this is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination, but the two big game engines that you'll often hear referred to in this space are Unity and Unreal. On the Unity side, we've got, like, if you're building specifically for an iPhone or an Android device, then you might want to go directly to ARKit or ARCore. But in general, Unity is a great way to address these things because they have an abstraction layer called AR Foundation, which allows you to ship across all kinds of devices and still have that AR functionality. In Niantic's case, with our light chip technology, that also is completely cross-platform and allows you to do things like real-time meshing, so getting a proper mesh of the environment, which you can use for both placing content, occluding it, and all that fun stuff, the visual positioning system for persistent anchoring that I was talking about, and a whole host of other fun features like semantic segmentation. I know where the sky is, which means I can put fun stuff in it. It's really neat. And that's on the app sort of native code compiled side. Web-based, I mentioned Eighth Wall. There are a whole bunch of tools in this space, and again, that's one that's continuing to expand as well as the open standards bodies begin to slowly migrate their way towards like understanding what open standards are going to be successful in this space. So I definitely check that out. And the key thing here, I guess, is what is the thing that you're trying to build? So if you're on a VR headset and you're trying to get like a really high fidelity thing going, and you've got folks who maybe have worked like in a virtual production environment using Unreal, for example, cool. Go first to the place where people kind of know how to use the tools, and then build up from there. Like I say, everything is gonna be complicated and hard, so mitigate your risk by like if there's any foothold you've got somewhere, use that to start. And lastly, rapid prototyping and playtesting. This is my bread and butter. This is where I get to have the most fun because it's where we get to try all of the things before we actually have to build it for real. Once you start building it for real, it goes from we've got 3 new prototypes every 2 weeks to it's been 3 months and I think things have changed. It's better than that, but you get the idea. Again, working in tech, if you develop any sort of products, this is not news to you, but I think what surprises people sometimes is just how quickly you can make progress once you get a team rolling. In my case, with a team of 8 years ago, we got to a stage of 3 prototypes every 2 weeks. We have a whole cycle process around that. Once we got to 10, 12 people, that started to scale up. And at one point, with 25 people, we had 5 new prototypes every 2 weeks to look at that were wildly divergent from each other. So you build a prototype, try to figure out what the key question is that you need to answer. What is it that's different about what you're doing that you don't have an example of out in the world you can draw on? So build your prototype, make it, play test it as soon as you can touch it. Give it to people, preferably the people who are your target audience, but regardless, anyone who's just not familiar with it, literally hand it to them and watch what they do. It'll mostly make you sad because nobody does the things you expect. So then you've got to learn a whole bunch and you adjust from there and try it again. At some stage, and this is definitely more of an art than a science, you need to know when to stop playing with the prototype side of things because you've figured out the core and then move towards the sort of production or pre-production phase. But in short, fail fast. It's way cheaper to do it fast and way more fun because you haven't spent 6 months building something to discover that it doesn't work. You've spent 2 weeks and gone, okay, and moving on, and you learn from that. And a bonus tip, have fun. It's true. Obviously in games, if people aren't having fun when they're making these things, it's unusual, almost surprising how much that translates to people not actually having fun with the game you made. I tried to have fun with Midjourney, so I said, T-Rex having fun on a water slide. Maybe need some work on faces. I don't know. But thanks very much.
Alrighty, thanks, James. Now, I've never done this before, going off script. Now, if you've driven in a car here today and it's a Kia Sorento and it's the number plate JMR832, you might want to move your car. Because here's the deal. You've parked in the spot reserved for the chief executive. I hate to break it to you, you ain't that chief executive. So please move your car because it's going to get towed.
Wasn't me.
Alrighty, thank you, James, for such a wonderful session. We've got a couple of questions for you. What has changed around the privacy concerns since the days of Google Glass that will help adoption?
What's changed? A whole lot of things, both. And I don't know that these things have been addressed sufficiently well for the general public to actually be comfortable with them, right? I think there's time, obviously, has gone past, but in general, there's a much better understanding and acknowledgement of what privacy requirements are out there. Many of the headsets, for example, the images captured from the cameras on the devices, which are required to maintain head pose, so knowing where that device is in space, never leave the device, so they are actually processed on device and then discarded rather than going to the cloud and being stored anywhere. So I think there's that. Obviously, from a legal perspective, GDPR in Europe, the Privacy Standards Acts here in Aotearoa, the standards in California and elsewhere, the legislation has become much more mature, and the enforcement of that legislation you're starting to see actually happen. And so I think it's a broad combination of things, and something that I and my colleagues think about a lot because I'm deeply uncomfortable with the idea of putting stuff out in the world that can harm people. And as I oscillate rather wildly between like real excitement about all of this stuff, which is why I'm in it and doing it, and terror, because it can go horribly awry. And that's all of the amazing stuff that we can do has a flip side to it, and we have to actively work against that flip side.
Nice, thank you. And just a reminder, please put your questions through into the app. With the recent events that are going on, the whole Twitter thingy-majiggy, this question got the most votes, actually. What's your view on metaverse? Going the other way. You don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, I think, so metaverse is, it's the evolution of the internet of spatial computing, right? Like it's one more step, right? We had Web 1.0, we have Web 2.0, we have whatever. I don't know if anybody remembers Internet Superhighway, right? It's a term for a thing that we don't have well defined yet. So I think what is accurate and is definitely like we're on the path already, is that we're gonna end up with more spatial computing, more AR, more VR, that is seamlessly just a part of all the things we use. When you get on the internet today and you go to do something, you kind of bounce between a few different areas, but there's a lot of interoperability between all of those things, right? You aren't slowed down too much. There's not a lot of speed bumps about just like jumping around. And so getting more spatial computing, more AR and VR stuff sort of into that space, we'll see that. Whether people are gonna decide they wanna live in it full time, I don't know. But it's gonna be interesting and deeply weird.
Nice. Do you think with people getting used to wearing masks without embarrassment, it will actually assist everyday adoption of wearables?
Ooh, good question. I don't know. I don't think so. And this is pure conjecture on my part. I have nothing to back this up, so I'm just responding in the moment. But I think the wearing of masks and that sort of thing, that's a very, it's personal. It's about you protecting yourself and about you protecting your community, which is a very different thing than I'm wearing glasses for utility. So I don't think that there's really too much crossover there other than maybe being a little bit more comfortable having something on your face. But like, how many people here are wearing glasses? How many people wear glasses around the world constantly all the time? Like so I don't think it's too much overlap there.
Awesome. With a couple of minutes left, how many headsets do you personally own, and do you have a favorite?
Duh. One, two. No, I was sorry. I'm thinking about it because I'm like, wait, which ones do I own? Which one are company ones? Which ones are whatever? No, I think I own two. I have a Quest 2 and I have a Magic Leap 1, which is one of the only bits of severance I got. I mean, the Quest 2 is really neat. People are building amazing stuff for it. Walkabout Mini Golf is super cool. If you like mini golf, do recommend. And then the Magic Leap 1, I mean, I guess that's, I'm biased because I got to build on the thing and we made a bunch of very cool stuff for it. And there's still like experiences on that we released in 2018, 2019 that are still cooler than most other things I've seen. It's just, not many of those headsets in the world. So I don't know. I'm very excited about head-worn AR. That's my jam of like when we get to just sort of everybody being able to wear these things. Multiplayer experiences in them are the thing that's just like, it's so cool. We made a ridiculous game because we know where your head is and we've got eye tracking because we need to keep stuff in focus and a bunch of other things. We basically gave everybody giant masks that looked like their characters, and we used the eye tracking to drive the eyes, and as you talked, the mouth moved. We weren't doing any funny phone detection and stuff, didn't quite get to that, but just, hey, you're making noise, the microphone's got it, we flapped the lips. We gave people ray guns so they could shoot each other. The heads would do these big cartoony things. The most fun people had, though, was pouring tea. We had an infinite teapot, and people just like be pouring tea, and then they'd pour tea on each other, and they walk around. But 4-player multiplayer in this just ridiculous environment where it feels safe because there's no motion sickness because you can still see the real world, you still see the people around you. Your proprioception isn't messed up, like you know where you are. And so multiplayer experiences, I think, are the ones that are just, it's so neat to be able to give people these experiences that are impossible but feel very real because we're all together doing them. Sharing the hallucination is great, strongly recommended. Yeah.
Please give a hand to James for a wonderful session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, we're now going to break for morning tea, thanks to Sequent. Food's going to be smattered all around. You know what food looks like. I'm going to tell you where it is. It's going to be a little hunt for you. Please don't forget the barista coffee. I've only had 5, and that's thanks to our great friends at 00 Consultants. There are T-shirts that you can purchase. Please grab one. They cost some money. There is an F-posty thing there. You know how to use it. It's tech. Please check out our exhibitors, our sponsors. They are wonderful people. We wouldn't be here without them. In the morning break, we are going to have a network